Hi, everybody. We are here for another wonderful Good Gut Live. We're going to have an excellent guest and we're going to have an excellent topic and discussion. So we're very, very excited. We're going to have our guest introduce herself first and foremost, and then we'll kind of do intros. Dotsie, go for it.
Hello, everybody. My name's Dotsie. I told you guys that's all I was going to
Okay,
do.
well, I'm gonna go, or Gordella, go for it.
We're excited to be joined by Dotsie. Dotsie is not just one of our incredible friends, she's an incredible human being with incredible achievement. She's Olympic gold cyclist. She is the founder of Switch for Good, which is, if you don't know about Switch for Good, nonprofit Switch for Good, everyone needs to go on Switch for Good's website, check them out on socials. Switch for Good is doing great things to educate the masses on dairy alternatives and to make these necessary changes we've all been asking for. Like, why do we need to pay extra if we don't want cow's milk at coffee shops? And how do we get dairy-free options in the guidelines, the USDA guidelines, and in WIC, and some of these other programs that we as taxpayers are paying for, and those who are underserved really deserve better options for. So Switch for Good is one of our favorite organizations to collaborate with. Dotsie is the visionary behind Switch for Good and her amazing team. And I'm not even probably scratching the surface on all of Dotsie's amazing accomplishments, but we're so grateful to have Dotsie in our circle to collaborate in so many various aspects and to be joined today to discuss this topic that a lot of you wanted to know about. We're going to be talking all things dairy. So
Y'all
thank
have
you,
been
Dotsie.
so giving to collaborate with us on our new kids program at kidsandmilk.org. Y'all check them out on that. I was just looking at the homepage video and I mean, I know I was in the interview, but I was like, oh, that was so succinct and perfect and just incredible in sharing exactly what people need to hear when they go to that homepage. So yes. And James went to today's dietitian with Switch for Good and nobody hit you guys. It was pretty positive.
It was great.
I didn't know.
I was surprised.
Like, I'm not going. They're going to yell at us.
and that's why the topic today, like, is dairy good for your gut, and really is dairy good for your health? And really it's sharing the science, right? We're not going there trying to like demonize people. We come from the stance of like free will, free choice. Everyone, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're on a gut healing journey, if you're on a health journey, if you have kids, if you're a health professional, then helping others, right? If you're a health professional who's made it your mission to say, I'm going to help others become healthier, then let's look at the science, right? We're all kind of searching for this truth. And that's why, I mean, now it's like we're like 13 years plant-based, but like we didn't start out that way. I used to eat tons of cheese and milk, and I mean, you name it, I ate it. I was just searching for the truth, right? I was searching to become healthier myself. And then we became health professionals to help others. And I think it resonates with people, right? We're not, again, there to demonize something just to demonize something. We're there to spread a truth and to educate and empower. And really those who get it, right? When they're seeing the education. And that's why Switch for Good has so many great resources and handouts. And that's what we're sharing at today's dietitian. And a lot of the dietitians there were just looking and going, oh, wow. Oh, I love that. Oh, yeah. You can get calcium from other plant sources. And oh, they have the protein compared to milk versus soy milk and other even plant sources of protein. And it's this idea that you can get these other nutrients, not only in abundance, but even in another synergistic effect with other nutrients. So it was just cool. So I think people just got it, right? It was
just educated.
Yeah. And I think we're coming into a time over the last few years where the general public, but especially practitioners like you all, like registered dietitians and MDs in the whole field of nutrition and even medicine are like, oh, we've been sold that. Mm-hmm. Like they've paid to tell us these things, whether we believe some of them or not. Just the awareness that it wasn't just truth pouring out of Big Dairy's mouth for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so that's helping because people are going, okay, hold on a minute. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe I like it. Maybe I'm still going to eat some of it, but I'm starting to realize that was literally sold to us. And there's a lot of money behind it and a lot of politics behind it. And that awareness alone, I've seen at events makes people, it's really refreshing to see us there. Like at Chicago Marathon last year, that athletes were like, finally, you know, and some drink chocolate milk after, but they were just like, we're just tired of this pressure. And like, this is the only thing you can have to recover on, period, is, you know, milk from a cow with some sugar in it. So that is refreshing that we're getting into that time where people realize, oh no, we have options and there's real science and I want to follow that. Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
And is that what's exciting you right now? Because I mean, I don't want to go through. I know you've done it a million times. Like, Dotsie, how did it all start for you? And like, I mean, we can do that if you want, but I mean, I feel like you've done that a lot. But right now, like, what's the most exciting for you? Is it still like the athletes when athletes kind of come and be like, oh, finally, or is it? I know now you're getting in with the
Yeah.
kids and families. So what is like exciting you right now in Switch for Good?
Well, I mean, the athletes always keep me, pumped and motivated. And we have 200 billboards in Paris at the Olympics this summer. So
So cool.
we're kind of embedded in that right now. So I am excited.
Wow.
My husband and I are going, and that's just going to be fun to tell the truth on those billboards. But the things that are exciting me the most are I love I love hard, and I love to learn something that I don't know how to do from scratch.
Mm.
And th- our bill in Washington is ridiculously hard. And I had no idea what I was doing from day one
Mm.
when we had the idea. I mean, I called somebody that has a career in DC passing animal rights, plant-based bills. It took me 6 months to even talk him into it because he was
Mm.
like, "Oh
Wow.
God, the dairy like I was like, but somebody has to do it. We've
Mm.
had only one choice in school for 77 years,
Mm.
and it is time. And if we don't pass it, somebody's going to come after us.
Mm.
It's going to
Mm.
happen. Somebody has to start. And so as little of a chance as we have, because the average bill takes 7 years to pass, and you also have about, I don't know why there's two sevens in here, about a 7% chance of your bill passing, the bill
Wow.
passing. And so that's pretty low as far as our chances go. But uh, just experiencing the entire journey of how we could win this, and getting it introduced in the House and getting it introduced in the Senate. It has to be bipartisan. It is. I mean, no bill has a chance, especially nowadays, if it's not bipartisan. So, but personally, but also organizationally, uh, that has us really excited, whether we win or lose.
Mhm.
Honestly, because I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with staffers from Congress that are shocked to find out that there's not a choice.
Mm.
Mm.
They were in school. Some of the really young ones will say, "Oh yeah, you're right. I just had, because the staffers are always pretty young, and so but the older staffers, chiefs of staff and like that are kind of are more our age, and they are kind of, so many that hasn't been fixed yet.
Mm.
It's We got to learn it. No, so
Yeah.
can we talk to your boss and get this going? But that was shocking to me. You just think everybody knows, and but they don't, and it makes just really logical sense to a lot
Mhm.
of them.
And
Some of
back
them
up
are,
and
yeah,
elaborate
go.
on the bill itself, like for those who don't know, like what is the bill you're trying to
Yeah.
pass?
It's called the Add Soy Act, and it's addressing
Mhm.
digestive distress in the stomachs of our youth.
Mhm.
And it is the Add Soy Act, as opposed to the Add almond milk, or the Add coconut milk, or any other wonderful, delicious plant milk that we all love, because the dietary guidelines deemed soy milk nutritionally equivalent from a macronutrient profile in the 2020 guidelines. That was
Mm.
a big win that we had fought for. And so Congress traditionally, not always, but traditionally leans into the DGA when they make
Mm.
amendments to the Richard B. Russell Act, because that's what this is, right? And that act was passed in 1946 under Truman and has been amended many times. So when Congress amends that act for school nutrition programs, they usually lean into the dietary guidelines. And so
Mm.
that's why we're suggesting soy, because there's no way it's going to be hard to win this, but we weren't going to win with any other type of milk in there. So that's the reason. But the bill it's the simplest bill that's almost ever been written, because some bills are, like 50 pages and stuff. This
Mhm.
is 3. It's so simple. Right now, in the National School Lunch Program, kids have one beverage choice. Well, I shouldn't say that. They have a few. They have strawberry milk, and they have chocolate milk, and they have white milk, but milk from a cow. And as you all well know, and your audience, a wildly large proportion of those children are lactose intolerant, could have a slight dairy allergy. It makes them feel like crap. In fact, 30% of the cartons that the kids take or the teacher places on their tray, which is more often the case, are thrown away unopened.
Mm.
So that tells us the kids know I don't like what's in there, or it makes me feel yucky, or both.
Mm-hmm.
So this act just brings in a replacement that is completely reimbursable by the NSLP, right? That's the difference, because now you have to like ask for it, and you have to have a note from mom and dad, and you have to pay for it. It's a nightmare. So this it just makes an equal playing field so that kids have a choice between a plant milk and a cow's milk, and it's paid for.
I love that. It's great because we all should
Amazing.
have a choice. Like how does that? That's a
Yes.
no-brainer. And especially like,
Right.
yeah, just I remember that as a kid where it was like, okay, milk again, huh? Like, okay, I'm gonna wash this down
We
with
had
some
those
milk,
weird little
or
bags of milk at my
yeah, and then
school.
the plastic bags of milk
Little
too
Ugh.
were really
Right.
bizarre.
Here's
And
your baby food.
Yes.
If you're not a baby anymore, like good for
Here's your milk udder.
it was, or it's
Right.
like I remember it was that, or if you're lucky, I think there was sometimes a juice maybe in the morning, and then it's like, okay, you're drinking milk or you're drinking like rusty fountain water, right? And like unless you're bringing
Right.
your own drink, and it's like, wow. So it is a
Yeah.
no-brainer of like, why not have more choices? Hey, there's nutritionally adequate choices, and even I would even say nutritionally advanced choices, and we can definitely give that to our future, right? Our children, and give them the very best possible.
And, I can't thank you enough as a parent because, when our daughter was in the public school system, she would tell us, Mom, my friends are having milk or they don't want the milk, but they have to get the milk. And I was teaching
Right.
them about milk. And, it's just so amazing to
She's a
know.
little activist, that one.
She is a
She
little
was.
activist. She got in trouble one day because she had all her friends put, their food that they didn't want in the middle in a tray, and they all squirted their milk on top of it in like an act of rebellion. And she got in trouble.
Yeah.
Now,
She should not have gotten in trouble for that.
well, with Dotsie's help,
Well,
they
it's
could
very
get
interesting
your soy
because
milk.
we remember a story. Yeah, that story where she was like, she was educating the kids of like, they didn't realize, oh, the milk is coming from a mother cow who
Mhm.
just had a baby. And she was educating them like the mom had a baby and they took her baby away. So then they
Good for
could
her.
have the milk. And the kids were like, what? Like they were just
What?
shocked.
Right.
And now
Things that
I
don't make
think,
sense.
and this goes back to that, right? I think a lot of people out there don't realize what milk is, right? And it's like it is the breast milk
Yeah.
of a cow, and the reason why it's being made is because the cow just had a baby, and the baby's
Yeah.
not being taken away, so
No.
we can all drink the milk, right? And that gets into a whole nother realm. But I mean, are you still talking a lot about that, Dotsie? Do you still have people come up to you like, I didn't realize that? Or I mean, is that level of education still like around you? You're kind of, I don't know, knocking on
Yeah,
that door
I
a
feel
lot.
like you guys hit this all the time, where there's like, if we say something is, bad about milk, it's like the dairy industry sort of doubles down, and now there's like
Mhm.
colostrum, and everybody wants to get some colostrum, get their hands on some colostrum for what? I don't know what they're going to do with themselves, but
Mm.
and then we could talk about the raw milk thing, especially as far as the gut goes. Um, when I was a couple years, maybe about 4 years before Olympic Games, my sister had her third baby, and my coach was like, "Get a hold of that milk." It was like a thing. It is a thing.
Wow.
And I was like,
There's
there
like
is
a
no
black
world
market.
where I'm drinking my sister's breast milk. Like, I get it, but like no, it's not.
Yeah.
It is not happening. But we no longer obviously need baby food as adults, but they have definitely sold to us, right? I mean, there are a lot of bad things in dairy milk, but there's a lot of amazing things, right? And that's where it's like, that's it for babies though. But if you were trying to do some crazy athletic feat, is it a good idea? So that's where I think so much of it's just bizarre. But a lot of the confusion comes in what we're seeing with like colostrum and raw milk, and it has all these detriments to, especially raw milk now with bird flu and every other reason for the gut. But it's these like niche things that kind of fly off and become, and people grab hold of them like on the internet, right? Or like, oh yeah, I got to get some of that like raw. It's like, oh my God, you're going to you're going to kill yourself with that raw milk.
Thank you so much for watching. We really hope you're learning something, and we really hope you know by now, Married to Health does everything with the patient, with our population in mind. So everything we develop, from our one-on-one care to our programs, and even we extended that when we developed Gut Nurture, it's all with you in mind. What our patients don't like to talk about are stinky farts. If your farts are smelling like egg, if they are smelling foul and clearing a room, you are likely having an overgrowth and a lot of issues going on. We developed Gut Nurture with you in mind. Amongst many other things, it is low sulfur, and it actually helps with hydrogen sulfide overgrowth, or really that overgrowth that's producing that hydrogen sulfide gas. If you're like, what the heck are you talking about? Click below, learn more, and get your hands on some Gut Nurture. Yeah, I would say raw milk. Yeah, definitely we're seeing a lot more of the raw milk. And you know what? It's always like it's like a half truth and a lie, or what is that? Truths and a lie, and we're always trying to figure it out, right? And where, yeah, there's some truth to that. Yeah. Like there was a great paper that recently came out about the milk microbiome, and each mammal has a milk microbiome, where before, I mean, just 20 years ago, we thought, oh, milk is sterile, and even our spinal fluids sterile, and all these fluids in our body are sterile. Like, that's
Wow.
not the case, right? Milk itself has its own microbiome. And so, yes, if you're doing raw milk, you're getting that microbiome of the cow. And we do share some species, right, of bacteria with cows, but not all. And then the amounts and concentrations and populations matter, right? So it's just like
Right.
asking, like, yeah, what are we going to eat? Food. Okay, what type of food? There's tons of variation in the type of food you can eat, right? So to just
Yeah.
say milk is milk and drink cow's milk, drink human's milk, it's great. No, it's very different, right? So we always say, I mean, and a lot of our audience has heard this, but milk is a vessel to transfer. And what are we
Yeah.
transferring? We are
Yeah.
transferring that microbiome. We're transferring hormones and nutrients. But do you want that transfer from a completely different species? Or do you want that? I mean, I would say if you're drinking milk, drink human milk. I would say get that black market breast milk if you're gonna. No, I'm just kidding. No, but not really. But I would say, this is what I was pointing out too at today's dietitian, and kind of reframing the mindset of some dietitians and health professionals, and going, look, we have 80%, 87% of Americans do not breastfeed exclusively after 6 months having their
Yeah.
baby. And so
Right.
87%, that is a massive, massive number,
Yeah.
where we are not giving our children human breast milk from their own mother, yet we're telling moms and we're telling parents, and we're giving them then the breast milk of a cow. That doesn't make sense to us. It's never made sense to us. And as more and more science comes out, it's like, what are we doing here? We're
What are we
neglecting
doing?
our own human milk, but then adding this cow's milk. Like, how does that make sense? And it truly doesn't. So then
Yeah.
we have to ask, what is happening from that, right? And this is a new, even the idea of a milk microbiome is fairly new, like in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
So it's exciting. It's opening up a whole new kind of realm of science to go, oh, milk microbiome. Let's see how this translates into human health, which
Yeah.
studies are now ongoing into this. And I think we've done that experiment, right? Where
Yeah.
more and more kids are not breastfeeding, but they're consuming cow's milk. And how's our health, right? And
Yeah.
what's our health looking like now? Not good. So it's definitely a
Yeah.
contributor in our mind. But I don't know what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. Well, no, well, it was, I mean, I agree. And I'm so glad you were there to kind of like redirect
Right.
and educate. And basically it's just a thinker, what you're
Mhm.
saying. Like it really, you go, "Whoa," cause well, I think you guys, I mean, we've been vegan since birth. So,
Mhm.
or plant-based since birth, right? So we were in that category of the people that, bought the Kool-Aid for a
Mhm.
while anyway. But what you're saying was making me think about, and this is sort of a question really that I'm sure the audience probably has too. You have symbiotic and parasitic organisms, right? That react to what we swallow, what we put in our gut. And so the parasitic, right? The high fat foods, particularly those high in saturated fats and trans fats, generally support these inflammatory parasitic microbes. But we want the symbiotic microbes, which come a lot from fiber. You guys always, say, and so I'm wondering if, that's the key right there. Symbiotic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not symbiotic microbe, organisms if it's coming from something that is a different species. It's not symbiotic to our bodies and our guts.
Well, it's interesting because I think for the gut in particular, yes, you have some say, well, cow's milk has prebiotics in it. And especially for an infant gut who is still developing, they can
Right.
acquire those human milk oligosaccharides from cow's milk, which are also available in human breast milk. So, yes, on one hand, it's a prebiotic, it's food for the bacteria that are budding in a newly forming gut. And then you have some studies who do show cow's milk in particular is much more likely to carry inflammatory opportunistic microbes. Enterococcus is one example where they showed when you're consuming cow's milk, you're more likely to come into contact with enterococcus, which is an opportunist that's going to over infiltrate your gut microbiome and then generate that inflammation. So, yes, it's okay. What are you trading off in order to acquire these prebiotics in the cow's milk where you
And
could
those
very well be
prebiotics are
getting
for
them
a cow,
elsewhere?
though, right? Like they're not symbiotic to our body. That's what so they're not necessarily good for a human.
Well,
Or are
some of
they?
them are similar, but some of them are completely different. And then, yes, the carbohydrates could be slightly similar, slightly different, but then the proteins are also different because, we can talk about lactose intolerance, and we know lactose is the sugar that's in the milk, and that's where those prebiotic fibers come from. But even outside of that, human milk, for example, does not contain whey. So you're introducing a completely new protein as well to the digestive tract of an infant that they otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to until later in life if a parent did decide to introduce cow's milk. So that's where, outside of just the milk sugar intolerance, the lactose intolerance, you also have more and more kids now with milk protein intolerance where their bodies just don't know how to break down whey. And we produce a different type of casein as humans than cows are producing. So that's where we're seeing, again, going back to inflammation, those two things could be very well generating inflammation. And then I love, Dotsie, that you brought up the saturated fat that's a lot higher in cow's milk, especially for a grown and a ready, matured, and developed microbiome. Whereas, maybe a budding microbiome of an infant could benefit or break down some of that saturated fat that's also in human breast milk. Those of us who have a mature microbiome, we do not need that amount of saturated fat. And if anything, it's harmful and inflammatory for our type of microbiome. So I think people don't really realize that. They think, what's the problem with milk? It's just a beverage. I think they're not really thinking of its broken down components. Like you can get prebiotic fiber elsewhere. You probably aren't breaking down that whey very well. And then it has so much more saturated fat than you would find in other sources. So why not go for an alternative?
I think what you're getting at, Dotsie, is really getting into the weeds of nutrigenomics, right? This idea, and I think it really touches on what you said, Dahlia, where we just take for granted what we're eating and drinking, right? We don't see it as this powerful mechanism that influences our genetics. And that's especially what milk does. Like people don't realize, oh, milk has DNA in it that's going to interact with my microbial DNA and literally shift my own DNA. That is the whole study of nutrigenomics. It's saying your nutrition is going to influence your genomics, your genes, and literally shape and reshape who you're going to be. I think most people don't think about that. And guys, let us know in the comments if you think about that when you're eating, because I would say 99% don't. And that's what you're getting at, Dotsie, where it's like, well, we're drinking cow's milk and they have different sugars and different prebiotics and different microbes and different proteins. And like, do we want that then? Is that what it's meant to be? And I think, and that's why we're on the page. And I think you are, Dotsie, like, no, because that's why we have human breast milk, which is made for us and made for humans and has all those right factors to put us on the right path, right? So it is very interesting. It's a mind
So it's
shift.
more than just the saturated fat in cow's milk that makes you gain weight. It is literally the DNA. And I mean, we say this all the time because it makes sense, but it really makes sense where you are drinking the milk from a mother who's going to grow her baby to 800 pounds in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
If that is not getting into us and the weight problem, we're going to be at 63% obesity rate in America by 2050.
Correct.
We might take ourselves out. The planet's going to be fine. I don't think.
Yeah,
Just the diseases that are going to come from that, right? The heart disease and the diabetes, and it's just scary. I'm not fat shaming. I'm just saying that's a lot of disease. It's not overweight. It's obese. That's what the CDC. They just put it out like I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something. That will be up there.
It's interesting to see when we have a high density of microbes and we are transferring that, because what was kooky not too long ago was a fecal microbiome transplant. I don't know if you heard of that, Dotsie, but it reminds me, I'm like, this idea of drinking other breast milk kind of reminds me of that, because fecal
people were doing it from healthy people that were healthy, that had healthy poop. And
and so you're transferring healthy poop to an unhealthy person, and it makes them healthy, and you're going like, whoa, why is that? Well, it's because you're transferring such a large amount of microbes. And so with this whole raw milk movement, what's happening then if we're taking this large amount of microbes in cow breast milk and transferring that to a human? Is it, I think, and this is somewhat theoretical, but studies are coming out where it is a huge piece of the puzzle, this obesity epidemic we're seeing. I know everyone's blaming like seed oils, and yes, it's definitely hyper processed food. There's a lot of factors, but this idea of drinking a completely different species milk and almost transferring it into your system like you would almost a fecal microbiome transplant. It's theoretical, but I think we're onto something with that for sure. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane. So that's why, I mean, with all the work you're doing at Switch for Good, we are behind it because it's so needed. It's going, hey, let's understand nutrition better. You don't have to drink the breast milk of another animal. There are other options. Especially that's where we got really, I mean, we love the kids aspect and the family aspect and educating very early on and going, our daughter has never drank cow's milk. Our daughter has grown up. She's 9 years old, has never had dairy, and she's thriving. She's I mean, everyone says she's so healthy. It's like,
her pediatrician with decades of experience always would tell us she's one of my healthiest patients. She's one of my top healthiest patients. And
was your pediatrician freaked out at when she was 2 or 3, or was she always the pediatrician supportive?
She was supportive, feeling like, you guys know what you're doing, and it clearly you're having great results. She has high IQ, she has great growth, she is, socially doing well. So the results speak for themselves, whether it's our child, whether it's other kids. Now we're seeing so many more kids who are being raised dairy-free for various reasons, right? Whether it's intolerance, choice, ethics. The tides are really turning. Dotsie's really helping to do that as well and accomplish that.
So many reasons.
We're seeing that, we're not in a state of famine anymore, right? I think our country became so reliant upon dairy because there were times in war where dairy was a nutrient-dense food source. We're having the opposite issue nowadays in today's society.
No doubt.
We're in calorie surplus. And if anything, our government is now in this dairy surplus because now they have programs to really stuff dairy in anything and everything that they can. So, they have companies who accept dairy subsidies so that way they can stuff crust cheese pizzas and have stuffed crust this or cheese stuffed this or cheese topped this, because we have too much dairy now that we are producing. We subsidized and we incentivized so many dairy farmers to create so much dairy that now it's coming out of our ears, and we're sticking it in the school lunch program and in fast food and all these different places because there's so much of it, and it's already so abundant in so many American households. But there are more parents like James and I who are saying, no thanks, not for us.
And I know, Dottie, you were working on that, right? Where you were getting comments, right, for the new farm bill, or
no, for the dietary guidelines. I don't think the farm bill is going to pass this year, but Yes, we're still working on it because they have another meeting, the DGA, in September, and then they will make, well, sadly, it used to be the dietary guidelines scientist wrote the guidelines, but
Mhm.
nowadays they give recommendations, and then the USDA writes the guidelines. So
Mm.
that's why I think we're seeing, yeah. And so in Canada, because we were just um on the phone on was on our podcast, Marion Nessel, and she
Mm.
used to be one of the scientists on the dietary guidelines, like in the 80s. And
Mm.
she's the one that she said everything changed when that changed as far as who actually writes the
No.
guidelines. So yeah, that gap is frightening. But in 2020, we did win the soy. I mean, they finally put in a plant milk that said yes, this
Mhm.
is nutritionally equivalent. So what we're asking for there is just for the standalone dairy category to be
Mhm.
removed from the guidelines and put dairy just in the protein category, because that's what they do with all foods. What it kind of has the most of, they stick it that category.
Mhm.
Because, but the way it is now, I mean, steak should have its whole own plate. Broccoli should have its whole own plate. It's just it's like it shouldn't be a food group, but so that's will change a lot as far as
Mhm.
the agencies that do use the my plate. I think a lot of us don't even realize it exists, but a lot of the government agencies do use it very much, so that'll be powerful, and that's exactly what they did in Canada last time around.
Mhm.
But the people that wrote the guidelines in Canada, they made a promise to Canadians that they would accept um, zero influence from industry,
Mhm.
and our guidelines have not made that public statement yet.
Mm.
So, but that's when you don't accept anything from industry. Dairy was kicked out as its own food group. I mean, doesn't even make any sense, right? Scientifically,
Yeah.
like at all. It just should be in protein or maybe calcium, but probably protein category.
And this kind of circles back to how we were beginning this conversation of, people often don't realize how strong and powerful the dairy industry is, that they have
Yeah,
lobbyists who are lobbying our government officials and, lobbying to be included as part of whether it's women, infants, and children packages,
yeah,
whether it is in
yeah.
the US dietary guidelines. There's a lot of money in dairy. Coincidentally, we as
Mhm.
dietitians, like you were mentioning, Dotsie, not only is there a lot of dairy influence in our education, I remember
Mhm.
when I first started out as a dietitian, I would get emails from the dairy industry
Right.
and they would say, "Hey, can I send you brochures to give out to your patients?" And every single page was like, "Put cheese in this and put milk in that. And this is how you can
Yeah,
use
it's
cream and
crazy, isn't
butter."
it?
And it's like, wait, hold on. How do you have all this money to give me these beautiful 20-page packets that are color and glossy for my
You're in my tax
underserved
dollars.
population? Exactly,
That's what really
exactly.
makes me the craziest, is
Mhm.
we're paying for that because we know
Yep.
where the most of their income comes from, and it's like just
Yeah.
absurd. Yeah,
Mhm.
It
yeah,
is.
that they still get away with it.
But I wanna and shout out Marion Nestle. You mentioned Marion Nestle. She's OG. I mean, she's OG
Yeah,
dietitian, food activist. I mean, yeah, so, just a wealth of knowledge and information from Marion Nestle, and just with this
yeah,
whole I mean, this goes in so many different directions and goes so deep to politics and to lobbying, to our tax dollars. I mean, food, this is why we love food. This is why we fell in love with food, and we love all organizations involved with food because it goes so deep from
yeah,
family to your emotions, to your tax dollars, to your health. Food is at the epicenter of it. And then with that, food is what shapes our gut microbiome. So it's so amazing to see how many different avenues you can go down with this. And really that's why again, I just want to reiterate for those who are like, well, I ate dairy. My grandfather ate dairy his whole life and he lived to
right,
105 years old. And it's like that's great. We're not trying to discredit your grandfather, your great grandfather,
right,
anything like that, but it just goes to say for the majority of people, dairy has not and really doesn't need to be in their life. Where you have societies like Japan who have only had dairy involved really in Japanese society and history for the last 100 years, which is barely a blip, right? So it's this idea of I think most Americans can't fathom growing up without dairy, but so many populations have been doing it for so long. So many populations have been thriving for a long time without it. And then it's understanding why did it become so prevalent in our society, and just kind of going through some of those layers a bit. So it is kind of cool to unearth so many of those layers
Yeah.
for sure.
And it
Yeah.
begs the question, I just want people to think about, like, if we're
Yeah.
eating so much dairy, what are we not eating in this country, right? And I
Mm.
think that goes back
That's a
to fiber.
great point. Yeah. Yeah. And our grandfather too was, eating dairy from a cow who produced about 9,000 pounds of milk per year. And today they're producing 26 or more thousand pounds. So
Wow.
you're not drinking what your grandfather drank, I guess is my point.
Exactly. Great
Yeah.
point. Great point.
Mhm.
And please, yeah, I mean, even expanding on that, where we try to kind of go back and be like, well, yeah, my grandfather did this and that. I mean, the landscape of farming of the dairy industry is
Yeah.
so different. I'm sure you've learned a lot about that over your time with Switch for Good. And so, I mean, anything else shocking? I mean, I know I have some shocking like bits that I've unearthed, but like, yeah, just understanding. I mean, that's a quadruple almost, or triple
Yeah,
production over the
exactly.
really a small
Right.
amount of time. It's not, our
Not that
cows really
long.
haven't changed.
Right. Right. Just so they're just messing with the genetics so badly and the hormones. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm always gonna. There's nothing more shocking than having an animal that you have to have an entire baby and have it grow
Mm,
inside of her for 9 months
Mhm.
and drag it away so that we can suck on the food. I mean, it's just nuts. There's
it
just
is.
nothing crazier in the our food system that I can think of. And
Mhm,
it's my podcast partner Alexandra does quite a bit of undercover work and mostly dairy farms.
mhm,
So the most shocking stuff to me is, and I don't know, it's still shocking. I've seen a
mhm,
fair amount of it. You just, when you actually see it and you see those baby faces in those tiny huts. And the last time she measured the hut and then went home and measured her bathtub. And her bathtub is like 1 inch longer and one half an inch wider. And
wow.
these are, think about a puppy or a
Mm.
kitten, right? They're just so active. They just want to like move and play and grow, or obviously a human
Mhm,
kid too. But, and we lock them and we chain them in where they cannot move for 3 months. They're in there for 3 months before then they move them to wherever the next place that they're going to go, whether it's for
mhm.
veal or right back to what their mother was doing. But those faces in those videos that she gets, I just
Mm.
can't believe it every single time I see it, that that's actually real.
Thank you so much for watching this video. We know you're probably getting quite a bit from it. It can be a lot of information, can be overwhelming, and we totally get that. Dahlia was there not too long ago, suffering with IBS and SIBO-like symptoms. She was hunched over very often, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, skin issues, hormonal issues, the list goes on and on. So we know this. We've been in practice now as registered dietitians for over a decade, and we created our Good Gut SIBO IBS program for you. If you're experiencing IBS, SIBO symptoms, IMO, SIFO, the list goes on and on. If you're like, I'm not really sure what this is, click down below. We have a free assessment for you, and that'll likely lead you to our Good Gut SIBO IBS program, which is chock full of information we wish we had. It's information that we're giving to our patients, so it's all at your fingertips in one package. It's 7+ hours of video. It is dozens and dozens of handouts. It's tailored meal plans and recipes to truly help you get to the root, to truly help you understand what's going on so you can truly heal with each meal. Check it out down below. And I challenge everyone listening, watching, like, if you haven't seen any of those videos, I know it's hard. I know Dahlia hasn't, but
Oh, I have.
oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. But she doesn't like to.
But she doesn't need to because
She doesn't
she's
need
already,
to.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah, she's
convinced.
dairy free. She's
Yeah,
convinced,
no.
but it is very shocking. And then I would say one of the most shocking, I think this is when I was doing research for a project for Switch for Good a while back, was just realizing that the livestock and cattle industry allows plastic to be fed to a lot of these animals, right? It is quite
Yeah,
shocking to see what is allowed legally in the feed of a lot of these livestock animals that we eat,
yeah,
whether it is for
yeah.
steak, and veal, or it's for dairy. where a lot of times, oh, it's great, we're reusing waste from a supermarket, but the bread can still be wrapped in plastic. The tortilla packets are still there. They're not taking the time to remove the plastic packaging before it's ground up and slightly incinerated and then added to the feed of
Crazy.
livestock, which
Right.
is insane. And then we go into this idea of BPA free and everyone's getting BPA free
Right.
stuff, but little do they know
Right.
there's microplastics in their milk, in their meat, in, a lot of this animal products that they're consuming. And it's like, that's a whole nother layer. That's like, it just blew me away. I was like,
Mm.
oh my
Right.
gosh. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's so crazy.
And yeah, I don't
I
think people know these things or are thinking about these things or, just what you're sharing, Dotsie, with the conditions that they're living in, that's going to have an impact on their hormones, right? If you're living in under such stressful conditions, these cows are going to produce higher amounts of
yeah.
cortisol, and that's going to change their hormonal balance as well if they are living under such stressful conditions. So I think people really aren't realizing these different components. It's not just carbs, protein, and fat. There are hormones, there are microplastics, there are so many other things that go into it.
And the connections, the I think I've told you guys this, but your audience, not the Louis Facios, the director of the Game Changers, is working
Mm.
on a plastics film now.
Oh.
Mm,
And he's got the sizzle done. So he's been doing a lot of filming of a lot of experts. And he said each and every one of us adults in the United States eat a credit card size of plastic weekly.
Hmm.
You all know that, but it's like
yeah,
that I
it
was like,
is.
okay, you know what? I don't even know what to do anymore. How,
Yeah,
I'm trying to do, but it's in everything, to your point. So,
yeah,
right, it's in the milk now. We're not eating that, but I mean, I don't know, maybe it's in soy milk. I mean, God, it wouldn't surprise me. So it's just everywhere. I don't know how we get away.
yeah. It's hard. I mean, it is. I think it's kind of like in the same way. I know when I used to work in public health, it was like this idea of create the policy and it'll help, and it does. And I think,
Yeah.
however, so many of us in all industries. So one of I think the best things I learned in public health was this idea of every industry, no matter if you're doing construction or you're bottling milk, whatever you're doing, you have a health in all policy. And
Mm,
we would take it further. And one of our missions, one thing we're very vocal about is this idea of going, if you care for the smallest, you care for all. So if we
yeah,
did
I
everything
love
to
that.
care for our microbes, we are by default caring for everything else.
Hmm.
So we know plastic hurts our microbes. Maybe we shouldn't use plastic. We know, added hormones hurts our microbiome. Maybe we shouldn't add hormones like to our cows and other livestock, right?
Right.
Antibiotics. 80% of the antibiotics we consume and make in the US goes to our dairy cows and our livestock cows and so on.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's not good for our microbes, right? So if
Mm-mm.
by default we adopted this microbial health for all policy, that would have a massive ripple effect across the board, right?
I
And
know.
what could that do? Well, that could do a lot of things. But to bring it back, I want to, yeah, a message of hope is
The
that
plastic show now, everyone join.
I know, welcome. Now you're worried about cow's milk. Now you got to worry
Right.
about plastic.
No,
No,
I know. It's so depressing. Like, what can I eat?
but that's why. That's why we're saying you can eat abundance. There's so much you can eat. There's so many plants you can eat, right?
Mhm.
And
They're
we've
not
seen it.
feeding the plants plastic yet, we
They're
feel
not
like.
feeding plants
So,
plastic.
okay.
Thankfully, thank God. But what I'm saying is, you have and you house in yourself an inner ecosystem that is the most important ecosystem.
Mm,
Care for that ecosystem, right?
yeah.
Whether that is, if you're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to decrease my milk a little bit, that's a win, right? If you decrease your dairy consumption and you're
Yeah.
increasing your, I don't know, whatever it is, sesame seed, sunflower
Right.
seed consumption, walnut, great. That's a win for your microbiome and the planet, right? So that's really what it comes back to. You can make
Yeah.
these small changes in a positive way, and it has a massive ripple effect for sure.
And, the benefit of adding more plants as well is that plants are natural binding agents. So plants are known to bind to cholesterol and remove it from the body. They can bind to excess hormones and remove them from the gut. They can bind to microplastics and endocrine disruptors and remove them as well. So, you're really feeding two birds with one seed. You're getting this
Yeah.
double-headed benefit where you're reducing something that could very well increase inflammation and increase discomfort, not just because of, again, lactose intolerance, FODMAP intolerance, milk protein
Yeah.
intolerance, but all these other things that we've discussed. But then again, it's, well, if I'm removing that, what am I adding instead? I always like to focus on what am I adding
Yeah. Yeah.
instead?
You guys are so great like that. It's so positive, such a
And
positive spin.
so important because, yeah, we're not here to spread this message of fear. We're here to educate people. I think knowledge is power. It can be overwhelming if you don't know what to do with the knowledge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're instead saying, okay, well, I heard today soy milk is nutritionally equivalent, that could be a great option for me, for my child. Somebody's asking, at what age do you wean a baby
Mhm.
from breast milk to plant-based milk, and is organic soy preferred? This is a great question. The World Health Organization recommends 2+ years to breastfeed. So it could be 2 or more years that you're breastfeeding. And then soy milk is a great option. Soy milk or pea milk have been the two that have been nutritionally similar, but
Mhm.
organic soy milk is a wonderful option. That's what we utilized for our daughter. You do want to try to ensure you're getting calcium in there. If you're not getting enough calcium in your diet, you want to get a calcium fortified milk or give your kids some additional calcium, but that
Yeah.
can be a great option. So now we're saying, okay, milk is not the only choice as well, whether your kids are at school or whether you're weaning and looking for another option. We have great options nowadays, and they're very easily accessible. And hopefully soon they will be found in your nearest public schools and public school programs, thanks to Dotsie and all her
We'll
hard work
see.
at Switch for Good and all their effort.
I also we had another question. Let's see. What did I see here? Let me
But
see. I think I lost it.
yeah.
Okay,
And
that was a
Dotsie,
great question.
how can people get involved in what you have going on, and how can people support your efforts, whether it is to support your efforts with the dietary guidelines for Americans that will be coming
Yeah.
out within the next year, or whether it is with this bill that you're trying to get passed? How can we support? How can our audience members learn more and support and just become more educated on dairy, whether it's for athletes, for kids, for all?
Yeah. Well, two ways to really get involved. So the bill that we have, I think a lot of us feel, or I'll speak for myself. I thought, well, representatives, my senators don't really. I mean, they don't care what I have to say. They're not really listening to their constituents. They talk a good game, but I've definitely learned in my time in Washington that they absolutely do.
Mm,
They not the senator or the congressperson themselves, but their staff is required to read every single
mm,
email that comes in the door from constituents.
Hmm.
So it is
interesting.
really powerful. If they start to get a swell of an opinion or an ask from a constituent, they look at it deeply. If there's a good swell, if there's a good amount of folks that are saying, "Hey, this matters to us. This is important." So, don't think that it's not important. And for the Add Soy Act, it's super easy to go to switchforgood.org, and it's the number 4 in between switch and good, because you can just click on the box that says Add Soy Act, gives healthier kids healthier choice at school, and you click on that and you can send a letter in. There's a
Mm,
pre-form letter, but you can write your own if you want, and then you have to fill out your address because it has to go to your your congressperson and your 2 senators. But that is a powerful action that takes, I don't know, not even 3 minutes really, unless you want to read the whole letter, which we hope you do, because then you can understand what we're doing even deeper. Same exact thing with the dietary guidelines. Last time when we fought for soy milk to be included as nutritionally equivalent, we Switch for Good made up 26% of all total comments that went into the DGA, and they
wow.
listened. I mean, they have that for a reason. The
Mm,
committee, the dietary guidelines committee, goes through those comments. So this time we're shooting for 35%. So sending your comment in, again, same thing. It's a pre-form, but you can write your own if you want. So those 2 actions you can just take on the homepage pretty quickly. But just in general, I mean, come to our website, hang out, go to kidsandmilk.org where you'll see James and Dahlia on the front page. Check out our work with Starbucks. We have something kind of coming up really big in about a month in Seattle on the start, trying to get Starbucks to drop their plant milk upcharge. And the whole reason for that really, and with Add Soy as well, we strongly believe that we have to continue to normalize plant food.
Mhm.
The weirder and nicher it is, the more people that won't touch it. So this Starbucks thing is really about normalizing these wonderful options of plant food, and don't put them over here in the weird category where you have to charge an arm and a leg for somebody to have access to it. First of all, it's not fair. It's not diverse. It's all sorts of problems there. But we just really believe that we're, on a large scale, we're going to need to continue to normalize plant foods in general. So
I love that. We'll have all the links down below.
okay.
I
You guys
love
are
that.
great.
Yeah, we'll have all the links down below. So if you're watching this later on, if you're watching live, you'll see the links eventually if you're live, but then watching this later, you'll have the links. So yeah, there's so many ways to take action. I love it. It's wonderful.
And yeah, we encourage those of you in our Good Gut gang, whether you're somebody who has irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, eosinophilic esophagitis, we know those conditions do not fare very well with dairy in their diet. So join Dotsie's efforts. We have already, but I'm so impressed, Dotsie, with just what you've shared. I'm so blown away that you and your efforts and your organization were able to acquire such a large percentage of comments for the guidelines that literally guide our entire country. So
it's the people. People care, right? They said, we put it out there and they sent them in. So, but we're all in this together. I feel the same about you guys. You guys are a powerful pair, and your whole team. And I love sharing this movement with you too.
Thank you, Dotsie. Yeah, well, we appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. I think that's a great place to end. And again, if you have any other comments, you can place them down below. We thank you again, Dotsie. It's been so great. Thanks for joining our Good Gut Live and talking all things good gut and getting into a little bit of the weeds.
Cool.
I think we scratched the surface, but it's quite a surface to scratch on dairy and just gut health and dairy initiatives and so much more. So that was wonderful. So thank you so much.
I'm glad we did it. Appreciate you guys inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. You continue to heal with each meal, and you stay tuned for what Switch for Good has for you and what we at Married to Health have for you in the future as well. So thank you again, Dotsie. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you very soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.